Throughout the early 2000s, the Los Angeles Lakers were the most dominant and notable team in the entire league, winning 3 straight championships under the leadership of star Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal. This streak would end, however, in the 2003 season as they missed the finals entirely, and after that in 2004, they would return to the finals before losing to the young and unproven Detroit Pistons, who shocked the entire NBA and the entire world. Before that, however, most people don't remember that the Lakers should have indeed lost to the Sacramento Kings in 2002 before even making it to the finals. This leads us to one of the most blatantly rigged moments/games in NBA history. But to understand that, let's start at the beginning of the 2002 NBA season. Coming off of 2 straight finals wins, the Lakers were obviously the favorites to win it again, but surprisingly to us and many of the fans at the time, the NBA had numerous other teams in competition with the dominant Lakers. Despite being a joke today, the Sacramento Kings came into the 2001-2002 regular season on a 2-season winning streak with winning records, 44 games in 1999 and 55 in 2000, before losing to the Lakers in the first round and second round in each year respectively. Despite the success, the Kings were largely still viewed as the little brother to their more popular Lakers in California, just south of the town of Sacramento. But under the leadership of Mike Bibby, Peja Stojakovic, Vlade Divac, Doug Christie, and star power forward Chris Webber, the Kings would finish first in the Western Conference with an outstanding record of 61-21, nearly 3 games over the 2 next closest records in Dallas and Los Angeles, also 4 games over the San Antonio Spurs. Even with injuries to Webber, which only allowed him to play 54 games on the season, the Kings came into the playoffs as the unanimous best team in all of the league, to most sports outlets at least, and also were expected to have a relatively easy path to the NBA Finals if they just kept up their play. This outcome set up another rivalry between Sacramento and LA, where 2 straight seasons of playoff losses left Kings fans with a nasty taste for revenge in their mouths, hoping to dominate the Lakers if they were able to match up in the playoffs. And now we go into the NBA playoffs for the 2002 season, and both teams relatively had an easy start to the playoffs. Sacramento coasted through an extremely old Utah Jazz team in a 3-1 victory, which at the time was all you needed in a 5-game series. The Jazz were led by aging veterans Karl Malone and John Stockton, and they were on the end of their dominant run. The Lakers also demolished an aging super team that built just recently in the Portland Trailblazers, led by 14-year veterans Scottie Pippen and Shawn Kemp, respectively. The second round is where it got a little bit more interesting. Both teams faced off against another top-tier team. Not each other just yet, but one more series win and each team could take each other on in the Western Conference Finals. The Kings ended up taking on the Dallas Mavericks, who were the 3rd seed in the Western Conference at the time, and the Lakers took on the Spurs, a team that had dominated them multiple times in the past. In disappointing fashion, though, neither matchups really lived up to expectation. The Spurs and Mavericks put up very little resistance, and both teams would lose their respective matchups 4-1 in the second round, even with Tim Duncan and Dirk Nowitzki putting up immensely impressive numbers. With the first 2 rounds of the playoffs finished, the stage was set for yet another Kings-Lakers matchup, but this time in one of the biggest settings ever for the chance to play in the 2002 NBA Finals. And that's where we begin the story of one of the most rigged games in NBA history. But before we get into that, we need to talk about how we got to that point in the series. On May 18th, 2002, Game 1 was set to take place in Sacramento as the Lakers made the short trip north to the town of Sacramento. However, controversy did not start immediately. The first few games went by relatively smoothly and without controversy outside of a few single calls from referees. Game 1 went to the Lakers at 106-99, and the Kings took the next 2, Game 2 and 3, to Sacramento, making the series 2-1 in favor of the Kings. In a nail-biting Game 4, however, the Lakers squeaked by 100-99, tying up the series as they went back to Sacramento for Game 5. Once again, though, the Kings took Game 5 by 1 single point, 92-91, with Chris Webber putting up 29 points and 13 rebounds to seal the deal and put the Kings into a win-now scenario for Game 6. And this is where we get into the moment as the fun begins in Game 6 and what is now remembered as one of the biggest rigged moments in NBA history. To begin with, though, we need to look at the referees on the court. And while not known at the time, the series was refereed by infamous referee Tim Donaghy, who is known for extending a series at all costs, no matter what it meant to the integrity, and would eventually be put in jail around 2007 as he resigned from reffing in the NBA because he bet on games that he had reffed over the previous 4 seasons. With this in mind, it seems fairly obvious that the game was rigged, and even Donaghy even came out and said it blatantly in 2019, quoting, and I'll say it again, there's no doubt in my mind that the Mavericks should have a ring from 2006 and the Sacramento Kings should have a ring from 2002. If it wasn't because of the officiating and the officials on the floor for certain games and the supervisor of officials back in 2006, I think they would have a ring and they should have a ring. And without this evidence, it seems interesting and obvious that the series was rigged. But despite this, simply watching the games, it gets even worse. Throughout the game, in Game 6, the Lakers would end up shooting a total of 40 free throws throughout the game, and most notably 27 of those coming in the fourth quarter, which both teams came into tied at 75. The game also featured both Kings centers fouling out and Vlade Divac and Scott Pollard, leaving the Kings without a big body to throw at Shaq. In turn, there were even some completely phantom calls, mostly involving stars Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal, receiving favorable calls to promote free throws. And while this was not a rare thing to happen for a guy like Shaq, who was so dominant in the paint, it was on a much higher level than it had ever been seen before. The most notable non-call, however, or the most notable bad moment from the rest, was actually a foul that wasn't called. With 12 seconds left in the fourth quarter, Hedo Turkoglu, small forward for the Kings, drained a layup to bring the score to 103 to 102, and Kobe Bryant, on the consecutive inbounds play, completely and blatantly elbowed Mike Bibby in the face with force, and the ref seemed to completely miss the call. Bibby fell to the ground with holding his nose, allowing Bryant to get open and get the inbound, which allowed him to get fouled, and essentially he would go on to ice the game with no time left. And at the time, there was nothing the Kings could do. All they could do was complain a little bit and move on to Game 7. And in Game 7, time moved on. The Kings barely shot over 50% from the free throw line in Game 7, while the Lakers shot 81% on basically the same amount of attempts. The Kings would end up losing 112 to 106 in Game 7, and the Lakers went on to win the finals that season in a relatively easy fashion, completing their three-peat and mimicking what Michael Jordan successfully did in Chicago, with very little players even mentioning or noticing how poorly officiated the Game 6 was at the time. It has since garnered more attention, obviously, but the Lakers never received any type of feedback or punishment, and likely never will, because of how long ago it happened and how little people actually understood what went on at the time in 2002. And while the calls are fairly obvious and look a little suspicious, and Tim Donaghy basically confirmed the suspicions in 2019, as I mentioned before, when he came out and openly talked about the situation, this definitive info or evidence may not convince everybody, as some people still doubt it completely, and numerous Lakers fans claim that they won the series fair and square. Overall, though, this is a dark moment in NBA history, which I always find hard to talk about due to its impact on the Sacramento Kings and how long it has been since the Kings even have been close to the top. They have not made the playoffs since 2006, and that is the last time a player has played them in the playoffs. No current NBA player has actually been able to play the Sacramento Kings in the NBA playoffs, which is a crazy statistic. That just shows how much impact this loss had on the franchise as a whole, as they would be on a downward spiral with aging stars the next few seasons before they completely hit the reset button and went into the rebuild. Thanks to everyone for watching this documentary video on NBA history. I love to go through NBA historical moments, and if you enjoy content like this, make sure to check out my most recent video before this, where I went through the 2011 NBA draft and looked at the top 10 picks and where they're at now. If you do enjoy my videos, make sure to hit the like button. Let's try and get 10 likes on this video, and also subscribe and turn post notifications on so you stay up to date on every NBA news and NBA history video I post on my channel. I'll see you guys and talk to you guys next time.